Hi, I still don't have a formal intro. So last Monday, the Pope passed away. And where most of the world began to mourn the presence of this very progressive figure within the Catholic Church, which has historically been a pretty conservative religious institution, that vegan teacher decided that she's gonna go against the grain with this one. In a video titled, "Thank God He's Gone," posted the day after the announcement went out.
This is quite a shock! On the other hand, it's not surprising in the least.
Now, I have only seen that vegan teacher's ridiculous antics secondhand through YouTubers like August the Duck, shout out August, but I have never had the privilege, the utmost privilege, of being able to react to it firsthand. So that's what we're gonna do, because this is the first new That Vegan Teacher video that has come out since I decided to start making videos again. So much of That Vegan Teacher's rhetoric is inflammatory to the point where it almost feels rage baity, but like, it's towing that line between grifter and true believer, because if it were just rage bait, why is she okay with being seen as this woman who will grave dance on somebody who is arguably a pretty decent religious figure? And of course I'm putting the words arguably in front of it because of course this is the Catholic Church we're talking about. And also, if it isn't rage bait, then why is she okay with being seen and identified as the kind of person that people perceive her to be? I'm not going to do a huge deep dive on it because at this point I feel like everybody who has been on YouTube or TikTok or Twitter or something like that, even Reddit, I think, has had long threads of people talking about what a deplorable content creator she is and the kind of dog shit things that she says in the name of proliferating the message of veganism. Of all the different YouTubers that I watch in my downtime, I feel like August the Duck has the most videos talking about her in media res, like as things were happening, he's like, hey, get a load of this fucking guy. And I feel like that would probably be a pretty good place to start. But yeah, with that being said, let's get into it.
Somebody who isn't vegan consumes approximately 100 animals per year. The Pope died when he was 88. How many deaths is he responsible for?
Okay, but the thing is that that is just data based on the average person. That doesn't mean that he personally ate all of those animal products, and I don't think that she understands that.
Now that he's dead, is the world a better place? The Pope was a disgrace to Jesus, God, all true Christians, and any other religious or non-religious people in the world.
That is crazy work, Miss Kadie. That is crazy work. Because you get so many of these people who are on the conservative end of the aisle who are like, well, yeah, he was the biggest disgrace to Jesus because Jesus didn't like gay people, or Jesus didn't like these people, or Jesus didn't like those people. And it's like, when you're aligning yourselves with people who think that the church should be used as a weapon to oppress people rather than actually adhering to the message of Jesus and bringing in the stranger, praying for the sinner, helping the needy, the sick, and the poor, I feel like you're not on the best philosophical ground. And I feel like you're not the guy you think you are, Miss Kadie. Okay? Okay.
You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy.
I'm sorry. I think the reason, part of why I wanted to do this video is because I grew up Catholic, and like trying to find a way back to religion and spirituality outside of this very rigid structure that I grew up with, and trying to find a path back to it that does not feel like slipping down the tradwife pipeline. People like this really grind my gears in that respect.
He's in hell right now because he promoted the use of animal-based foods.
Okay, show me proof of that. Show me proof that he was like, it is God's will that you eat a cow. Just walk onto a farm, bite a cow in the ass, you're doing God's work. Prove that to me.
Animal products were savagely consumed or promoted by this disgraceful Pope. The Catholic Church has a long-standing tradition of using meat, dairy, and eggs in its ceremonies and celebrations.
If this is the bone that she wants to pick with the institution of the Catholic Church and nothing else, I'm kind of shocked at that. Because in the tenure of this particular pope, we have had the Catholic Church formally apologize for residential boarding schools in the United States and Canada. We have had them apologize for numerous incidents of child sex abuse. We have had them apologize for numerous instances of systemic misogyny. And this is the bone that she wants to pick with Catholicism? This is the bone that she wants to... Okay. Okay, Miss Kadie. Okay.
The Pope should have told everybody to stop eating eggs, because baby chicks are ground up alive at just 1 day old. He should have made them watch the documentary Dominion.
At this point, so much of her content feels like just a long tenure of sponsored content for this documentary, right? Because I feel like if she were to give us any sort of other proof other than this one particular documentary, people would not be so quick to ridicule her and criticize her, and I feel like she would also have a little bit more philosophical ground to stand on in terms of making all of the claims that she's making. Because if she were to present me with a scientific study that's peer-reviewed, double-blind, and is published by a reputable scientific institution about agricultural practices or animal husbandry or something like that, I'd be more willing to take her seriously as opposed to somebody who's just like, well, he didn't do this, which means that he said this and he did that. You know, like, it's not a very solid foundation to build your logical argument on.
The egg industry is just a cycle of misery. They lie to you endlessly. Don't buy eggs, walk away. Go to egg-truth.com today.
Okay, so
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because
I feel like this is a really specific logical, like a rhetorical tactic, which is like, I'm gonna get you super pissed off and then I'm gonna show you really shocking footage in order to bolster my point or to further piss you off. Because I feel like if she were just to say, this is what I'm talking about, and then describe what it is that the person is seeing on screen, that would be completely different. But what she's doing is just like flashing really troubling and disturbing imagery in front of you after she's just said something really inflammatory in order to evoke a very specific emotional response. And like, that's I don't like it. I don't like it one bit.
The Pope was a terrible example of manhood. Good men protect animals. They don't pay people to rape, kidnap, torture, enslave, and commodify them for a 5-minute meal.
So, what the fuck is she talking about? What the fuck is she actually talking about, right? Because again, she's evoking the idea of challenging someone's manhood and challenging somebody's idea of themselves and saying things like, you know, well, real men don't do this and real men don't do that. The words that she's using are intentionally inflammatory and they are meant to make you as angry as humanly possible. And like, when all you're doing is operating your argument off of an emotional response that you're getting out of somebody in order to push them towards your call to action, I feel like that shows that you don't really have a lot of substance to anything that you're saying, and you're basically just going off vibes. I mean, I've said this before. I was a speech and debater for almost all 4 years of high school. I was captain of my team for 2.5 years. So, like, when I see arguments like this, and it's like, oh, well, real men don't pay people to abuse animals for their benefit. Real men protect animals. Real men do this. It's presenting a very specific dichotomy of, well, if you're not this, you're that. And if you're not that, you're this. And it's like, that is not the way the real world works, Miss Kadie. And also, if you want to make a clear-cut, concise, logical argument against people consuming animal products, I feel like you wouldn't be talking like this. I feel like you would, again, be presenting me with some sort of peer-reviewed, double-blind study published by a reputable institution or a reputable journal of merit in order to say, like, hey, this is a demonstrable negative to consuming animal products. This is a demonstrable positive to being vegan, you know? But instead, she's just like, well, no, I'm gonna shit on you until you do what I say, which is so shitty. It's so shitty.
The Pope is in hell right now because he blessed the use of animals for food or to be treated as slaves. He should have spoken out against places like SeaWorld and circuses and zoos. He should have spoken out against bullfighting and the rodeo, but he remained silent while billions of animals suffered needlessly under his watch.
Is she talking about the blessing of the animals that they do every year? All right, let's do some looking up. The blessing of the animals has to do with the feast of St. Francis, according to St. Patrick Catholic Church and School, because he's the patron saint of animals.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get it.
Oh, good lord. See, this is what I was saying earlier, is that she's trying to draw upon people's natural inclination to be worried about animals and drawing on their empathy in order to frighten them and freak them out and upset them into acting a certain way or doing a certain thing. I just don't think that that's the way that anyone should be doing anything, especially when you are purporting to be, like, in the Catholic term, the patron saint of veganism, and that, you know, it's your life's work to mission to people and minister the message of veganism. I feel like if all your rhetorical tactics are just shock and awe, then I'm probably less inclined to do what it is that you're asking of me. She's not really explaining why the Pope blesses animals at all. She's basically going off of conclusions and then retroactively building her argument from a specific conclusion, but she's putting the conclusion up at the top so that it's the thing that's on your mind when she builds her argument back. And it's like, that's not the way that we conduct ourselves in a logical discussion, Miss Kadie. That's just not the way that we do things. Okay? I am 27 and you are much older than that. I feel like you being older than me with more life experience, especially with teaching experience, you would know that that is not the way that we do things. No.
The Pope has blessed farm animals like chickens, cows, and sheep, not as individuals deserving liberation, but often in the context of agriculture or food production. Animals are not objects to be bought and sold. They are individuals. They are sentient beings who have a right to live and not to die begging for their lives.
So, my problem with when she talks about food production and agriculture, it is less to do with, you know, oh, well, you should never talk bad about food production or agriculture, because there are many, many, many systemic issues with the system of food production in the United States, with the institution of agriculture in the United States, that you could absolutely take the piss out of, right? There are many, many things that you could critique about the agricultural industry, with the food industry, especially with, like, food regulations under RFK Jr., so many things that you could rightfully shit on, right? But she is choosing something that is not even in the realm of any of those things, and is like, well, we just shouldn't be doing any of that at all. No, I just don't think, no. And my issue with that is that when you look at a lot of what she says in her past about agriculture and food production, it has less to do with what is being produced and what is going into the production process, and more about the production process itself, right? Because her problem is obviously with capitalistic production. Her issue is with constant exponential growth in agriculture. It is with the abuse of animals specifically for production, right? Which means that her issue is not really with the consumption of animals or animal products. It is with the way that they are processed. Because within other faith systems like Judaism or Islam, there are many humane ways to slaughter an animal that are not just, oh, well, the meat is clean. Oh, that's what our faith says. It's because a tenet of those faiths is having stewardship over your environment and actually caring for the state of your livestock in order for it to be considered a humane slaughter or a clean piece of meat, right? But also, I feel like the way that she looks at agriculture and food production is very colonial and very, like, Western, I guess would be, like, the closest term to it, because, like, indigenous people all over the world have been consuming animal products since the beginning of time. To put it mildly, she has a very white way of looking at this that doesn't really make any room for a world outside of capitalist, Western, European modes of consumption and production. And it's like, that's fine if that's the way you want to see the world. Don't assert that as the sole perspective that you can attribute to this problem. Because when you consider the way that Western European colonialism, as well as imperialism, capitalism, especially late-stage capitalism with exponential growth, has impacted the way that so much of the world, not just in America, but outside America, functions, and how much it has interrupted the food systems that the Americas have been built on, I feel like then you would be criticizing colonialism, imperialism, capitalism, production, exponential growth. You would not be turning around and saying, well, actually, all of those things are fine if and only if they don't touch animals. I feel like that is an inherently flawed way to approach this problem. I feel like it's an inherently flawed way to respond to this problem. However, given the fact that Miss Kadie has been anti-black in the past, I feel like she just might be racist a little bit.
Here at That Vegan Teachers School are not woke. However, we acknowledge that the Pope, having been consistently a man over these years, is no longer okay.
And again, that's what I was saying earlier when she's like, well, he's a disgrace to Christianity. He's a disgrace to the church. He's a disgrace to Jesus. And then she's like, but we're not woke. We're not woke. And it's like, again, when you are aligning yourself with this hyper-conservative idea and this very conservative way of looking at the world, this very conservative way of looking at this specific part of the world, I don't really think that we are on the same side when it comes to criticizing agriculture, food production, and the treatment of animals in this country.
The next Pope should be a vegan woman.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
The Pope is a cowardly man who refused to do the right thing, despite having a lot of power to do so. He could have easily encouraged the entire world to strive towards being as vegan as possible, and led by example. But this is not what he did. Instead, he endorsed animal sacrifice symbolism.
See, here's the thing. You can criticize the office of the Pope for many, many things when it comes to the institutional oppression of women, when it comes to the systemic oppression of marginalized people in places where there are Catholic and Christian missions, right? You can criticize them for many, many things. But to turn around and say that somebody who used his last public address before he passed away to call for a ceasefire in Gaza and to call it Israel's genocide on the Palestinians, to call him a coward, that's... I'm sorry, that's just fucked up. Like, that's... I can't even think of anything else to say other than just like, that's a fucked up thing to say.
Even under his leadership, often included symbolism tied to animal sacrifice, example, the Lamb of God, without any explicit critique of animal exploitation. This was shameful, completely disgraceful on his part.
So, again, I grew up Catholic. I went to an evangelical Christian school, kindergarten to 8th grade. I can tell you that the iconography of Lamb of God is not necessarily because humans love to hurt animals. So this is from Loyola Press. It says, in the biblical story of Exodus, God led the Israelites out of Egypt where they were slaves and into the promised land. On the night God's people were to depart, the firstborn in all Egyptian families died. The firstborn of the Israelites were saved because God had instructed them to kill a lamb or goat and mark their doorposts with its blood. The angel of death then knew to pass over those houses. The Israelites ate the lamb in a meal before they left. The lamb was to have no blemish, and none of its bones were to be broken. To this day, the Jews remember this night as the feast of Passover. On this day, they share a special meal called a Seder meal. The shank of lamb is one item on the Seder plate. Jesus is called the Lamb of God because he is the perfect sacrifice offered to God. In 1 Peter 1:18-19, we are told, "You were ransomed, not with perishable things like silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Christ as a spotless, unblemished lamb." A prophecy about the Messiah states, though he was harshly treated, he submitted and opened not his mouth, like a lamb led to the slaughter. Isaiah 53:7. After Jesus' crucifixion, soldiers did not break his legs to kill him because he was already dead. Like the Passover lamb, his bones were unbroken. So, people do not call him the Lamb of God because they fetishize or have a thirst for lamb blood. It is because it is a part of the religious canon. And there are many arguments that people can make about whether or not every single little thing that is documented in the Bible happened one-to-one in real life, in real time. You can have that discussion all you want, but what she is attributing this to is wrong. Like, she's making a false attribution of why Jesus is called the Lamb of God in search of some sort of logical foothold that she could use to make you feel bad about doing something that she doesn't like. And given how much she's drawing on the conservative lexicon in this video alone, I feel like that is part of her logical tradition. It's just to draw on these very conservative ideas in order to make you feel bad about something that she personally doesn't agree with, even if it doesn't affect her in any way.
The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics has clearly stated that being vegan is healthful for all stages of development, including brand new babies, teenagers, adults, older people, pregnant women, and nursing women. It is also extremely inexpensive and would help to end so much poverty in this world.
Okay, tell that to people in food deserts. And for reference, let me just show you what a food desert looks like and what it is. So this was an article published in NPR in March of 2013 that says how to find a food desert near you, and this is a map of food deserts at that point, mapped from coast to coast, including Alaska and Hawaii. This is a map that was provided by the USDA through the Food Access Research Atlas. This shows you where food deserts are in relation to where you are in the United States. And for reference, as defined by the National Library of Medicine for the National Center of Biotechnology Information, affiliated with the National Institute of Health, holy crap. The term food desert describes neighborhoods and communities that have limited access to affordable and nutritious foods. The term was first used in Scotland and characterized by neighborhoods that can encompass many thousands of people and or an extensive land area as defined by a city block or square mile. In the United States, food deserts tend to be located in urban and rural low-income neighborhoods where residents are less likely to have access to supermarkets or grocery stores that provide healthy food choices. For communities with few food retailers or supermarkets that stock little to no fresh produce, low-fat dairy, whole grains, and other healthy foods, those populations may be more likely to suffer from high rates of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and obesity. Now, the Food Research Atlas is a tool that was developed by the USDA in order to track food deserts, and here's what it looks like as of February 20th, 2025. So I live in California, so I am going to drag that over here. So if we look at Southern California, we can see that so many of these areas are green, and what that means is that low-income census tracts where a significant number or share of residents is more than 1 mile urban or 10 miles rural from the nearest supermarket. What the yellow area means is a low-income census tract where a significant number or share of residents is more than 1/2 mile urban or 10 miles rural from the nearest supermarket. What the yellow means is a low-income census tract where more than 100 housing units do not have a vehicle and are more than, it doesn't really say, there's a question mark there, I'm not really sure what number that is, miles from the nearest supermarket, or a significant portion where share of residents are more than 20 miles from the nearest supermarket. So when she says things like it's easy, it's affordable, it's low income, it's good for you, that isn't the case for a lot of people in the United States, especially people who live in rural areas or who live on tribal land. And according to the First Nations Development Institute, almost all indigenous reservations in the United States are food deserts. The report states, American Indian and Alaska Natives also have the highest rate of poverty of any other racial group in the nation. In 2009, their poverty rate was 27.3, almost twice the national poverty rate of 14.2, according to the USDC. In addition, American Indian communities have some of the highest unemployment rates in the United States. High poverty levels, a large number of natives experiencing food insecurity, and many natives living in food deserts all contribute to poor health outcomes that include diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, and heart disease. Many of these communities are also food insecure, which means that even if they do have access to a supermarket, they may not always have access to food. According to the USDA, food insecurity is a household-level economic and social condition of limited or uncertain access to adequate food. Further, according to the recent government data, almost 1 out of 4 American Indians are food insecure compared to 15% of total U.S. households. So when she makes claims like this, it's almost like she's ignoring every other mitigating factor. She's ignoring any form of systemic or institutional marginalization that may prevent somebody from going on a vegan diet that isn't just, oh, well, I don't have the money for it, or oh, I don't need to, or I don't want it. There is so much of a deeper issue going on here that she only wants to scratch the surface of for her own personal gain or her own personal satisfaction, and that feels so disingenuous to me. It feels very intellectually dishonest, because like if she really cared about all of these people going vegan, about the entire world going vegan. She would be advocating for a more robust social safety net. She would be advocating for more reservations in the United States to get access to food and no longer be food insecure. All of these things have more mitigating factors to them that she just doesn't want to acknowledge, and if she's not going to acknowledge them, then I have no interest in acknowledging anything she's saying as legitimate or intellectually honest in any way.
So many people, animals, and the planet overall would benefit. So why did he fail to do it? Because he's a coward. The Pope should have been braver, but instead he is in hell right now because he refused to use the power that he had for good in this world.
Notice the way that she continues to repeat herself. He's in hell right now. He's a coward. He had the power and he didn't do anything. She said it at least 3 times per phrase. And the thing that really pisses me off is that, like, again, is a rhetorical tactic where she's repeating herself over and over and over again, because if she repeats herself over and over and over again, then it'll stick in your mind that, like, oh, he's in hell, he's a coward, he did nothing. It's almost like she depends upon her audience not being intellectually curious enough or not being critical enough of what it is that she's saying in order for it to just pass unnoticed, which, again, very intellectually dishonest, very Ben Shapiro of her.
He failed to advocate for veganism, for the innocent victims desperately suffering in an animal holocaust right now, when it would have been a win for everyone. The animals, the planet, and all of humanity.
I have such an issue with her using the term Holocaust or genocide when it comes to people consuming animal products, whether it be leather or beef tallow or eggs or something. I couldn't think of another thing. Not to say that, like, oh, animals aren't living things that deserve dignity. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that Holocaust and genocide are social science terms that are used to describe a targeted attack on a marginalized group of people. For example, we're watching one happen right now in Palestine, which is what the Pope said in his last public address before he passed away. And the fact that she's just glossing over that, and she's co-opting that language and saying, no, you don't get to use that, I get to use that, is so fucking shitty. That is so shitty. Go fuck yourself.
The Pope never publicly endorsed veganism or called for reducing meat consumption on ethical grounds. His focus was more on sustainability and stewardship, often avoiding the moral discussion around animal rights, which was an imperative discussion to have.
So, when we talk about imperative discussions that we want to have in terms of Catholicism, the church as an institution, the system of missions, the history of the church in the United States, I feel like whether or not it's okay to be vegan or whether or not you should be vegan maybe takes a lower priority in the list of many, many, many human rights abuses and other things that the church has done to harm the world around it. Miss Kadie, I say that as somebody who grew up going to church every Sunday, Easter, Christmas, every religious holiday. Yeah, fuck this lady for real. Like, I can't think of anything better to say other than just fuck this lady.
Failed to address all of the sexual abuse that goes on within the Catholic Church. He also never spoke out against what's happening to females right now. Female cows are forcibly tied up and impregnated against their will without consent.
We are at minute 5 and second 7, 5:07 of this almost 10-minute video, and she chose now to talk about the Catholic Church and sex abuse. She chose now to talk about the Catholic Church and misogyny and sexism, but she's like, oh, no, you think I'm talking about the other stuff? I'm talking about this. Oh my fucking god. You want to talk about who's going to hell? This woman's going to hell. Like, I know that the Pope said, I hope hell is empty. Hell has at least one person in it. It's this lady.
The dairy industry is just a cycle of misery. They lied to you.
And again, she's just showing a lot of stuff that I don't think should be put on YouTube in this specific context, framing it as, I'm gonna blur this out in post, but I mean, she's literally putting the words corner uncensored, and that really, yeah, I said it before, it is specifically meant to evoke a feeling of shock and upset and disgust, to the point where then she could bring you back and say, well, if you don't like that, then you should do this, or you should believe this if you don't like that. And it's just, it is such a disingenuous, dishonest way to talk to people about anything. You know, it almost feels like that thing from Eric Andre where he's just like, nightmare, nightmare, nightmare.
Nightmare, 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 nightmare.
That is not the way we conduct ourselves, Miss Kadie, and I feel like you as an adult person should know that. The fact that I have to tell you that is fucking crazy. Also, when she talks about plant-based milks, that's another issue that she's sort of glossing over, is that just because you swap one huge production in for another doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing something good. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but when California was really going through the worst of a drought, the reason that a lot of people pointed to was our almond industry, because it takes gallons upon gallons of water to produce a single almond. And I'm gonna be real, I have no idea how many almonds go into making almond milk, but I feel like it's a lot. It's enough to be like, we are putting a significant strain on the amount of water that can go around this entire state. What if we said, fuck all those people, it's almond time? And again, this goes back to the criticism that I stated earlier, which is like, her issue is with capitalism. Her issue is with the idea of objectification. Her issue is with commodification. Her issue is with all of those things, because if she actually gave a shit about the state of the agricultural industry or the state of the food production industry, she would criticize all of those things and not immediately go, well, it's plants, so it's okay. Like, whether or not you're producing meat or producing almonds is not necessarily the serve that she thinks it is, because if you're producing almonds to the same rate that you're producing beef or chicken or fish or anything like those things, that also puts a strain on the environment. That also puts a strain on the world's resources. And I need to be very, very, very clear. I am not saying that we should go all the way into meat production or all the way into animal production just to piss off this one lady. That's not what I'm saying at all. There are many, many benefits to reducing the amount of animal products that we are producing and perhaps increasing the amount of plant products that we're producing. However, she is not looking at it that way. She is looking at it as a sense of a one-to-one swap that will have no negative recourse whatsoever, that will have no negative effects whatsoever, that it's just like, fuck everybody else, I want some fucking almonds. And it's like, Miss Kadie, that is not the way the world works. I've said that at least 3 times, but that's not the way the world works, okay? And if you really gave a fuck about the agricultural and food industry, you would know that. Moreover, you would be telling your audience that. You would be demonstrating to them with the use of peer-reviewed, government-funded studies that demonstrate your point for you without having to do all of this fucking shit, without having to resort to all of this ridiculous theater in order to demonstrate what it is that you're saying.
The Pope wearing leather is wrong because it directly supports the cruel exploitation of cows and other animals in the leather industry. Leather is not just a byproduct of the meat industry as many believe. It is a co-product, meaning animals are specifically raised and killed, not just for their flesh, but also for their skin. Cows endure immense suffering in factory farms and slaughterhouses where they're confined, mutilated, and ultimately killed for products like leather.
So when she says it's not just a byproduct, I feel like she is sort of undermining herself in saying it's not just a byproduct, because she's conceding a little bit in saying that leather is a byproduct of the industry, because what else would you do with it? Literally, what else would you do with it? And I'm not saying that like everybody should go out and buy a cowskin rug or everybody else should run out and buy some alligator skin boots. That's absolutely not what I'm saying at all. By saying it's not just a byproduct, you are acknowledging that it is a byproduct of an existing industry, and otherwise we would have no use for it. Also, again, she's completely ignoring the place that animal products and animals have within indigenous culture, etc., etc. I've already said it before, she's just completely disregarding all of that. Because if you talk to an indigenous artisan, if you talk to, even just in the United States, not even the whole rest of the world, just the United States, the reverence that indigenous people have for the animals that they care for and the animals that exist within their ancestral territory, those animals have a space in their culture that cannot be replaced. They are stewards of those animals because they owe their lives to them, and they acknowledge that. For her to just say something like, you know, oh, well, he's wearing leather, so he's a fucking murderer. Oh, he's wearing leather, so he's a piece of shit. Like, that doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means. It has a lot of connotations to it that I don't really think she feels like acknowledging. I feel like she would rather just say it and leave leave. Kind of like the episode of American Dad where Francine doesn't want to answer any questions or do anything on a specific day, so then she'll just stick a hand in your face and go beep 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 and then run away.
But could you still, beep, beep, beep. Another clean getaway. What would I do without my eeps?
When that is all you're doing and that's your whole rhetorical strategy, I just have no other things to say to you other than don't let the door hit you where God split you, you know? Just like get the fuck out of my house.
By choosing plant-based or synthetic alternatives, the Pope could have set a powerful example of mercy and kindness, aligning his actions with the principles of caring for God's creation.
Does caring for God's creation include producing more plastic than the environment can possibly handle? Does caring for God's creation include the creation of more and more and more microplastics which will poison future generations? Does caring for God's creation include fucking the environment? I don't think that caring for God's creation includes those things. I really, really don't. Because when she says synthetic, what she's not saying is that plastic. She's just making plastic. If you have been alive in the past maybe, how old am I? 25 years? People have been really, really critical of plastic. People are like, hey, maybe we should make less plastic. We should recycle the plastic we already have, or maybe just stop using it at all. She's like, nah, fuck you. More plastic, more PFAS, more microplastics. Plastic. And I just... oh my god, you stupid, stupid idiot. I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not sorry. Fuck you.
The Pope was offered $1 million to stop abusing animals. He refused it.
Prove it. Prove that to me. Show me a news article. Show me a clipping on the screen. Anything. Show me fucking anything that demonstrates your point, that doesn't come from verb-noun.org or animal-thing.com. Show me something from fucking Reuters or CNN or CBS or something! Ugh.
Meanwhile, young children everywhere are choosing veganism out of the goodness of their heart, with zero compensation.
Time to change your religion like you...
Hold on, let's read this nonsense. The yellow text says, time to change your religion like you change your underwear. Change your religion, show God you really care. Orange says, change your religion, why not try something new? Use your critical thinking skills to... This bitch is not saying use your critical thinking skills. Be fucking serious. Question all you eat, drink, buy, think, say, and do. I can't really see it. The green text says, what's important no matter what is that you don't listen to what all the mean people say. So, she has spent the past 7 minutes of this almost 10-minute video saying that the Pope is a bad person for eating meat and wearing leather, and being like, he's in hell, he's a coward, fuck him and his mom. And then she's saying, oh, but don't listen to all what the mean people say. I'm not mean. While also splicing in footage of animals that are allegedly being abused to show to children. The fact that this woman has not been banned off of every major platform is truly shocking because... Alright, let me just get through this. My mom's almost here. The blue text says, time to change your religion if it tells you to be cruel. Change your religion if it has a strange or crazy rule. Change your religion. Why not be an atheist every Sunday? Sing this song and be vegan from now on. That physically harmed me to say those words. First of all, Miss Kadie, what are we defining as a strange or crazy rule? Tell me that right now. Secondly, why is atheism considered to be the favorable alternative to any form of religion, even though nothing about what you've said in this video is critical of the institution of religion or the concept of religion? You have been critical of a man who is the figurehead of a religion, but you haven't been critical of the institution of religion with a capital R. You haven't been critical of Catholicism with a capital C. You've had maybe a couple of things in the video where you're like, oh, well, these crazy Catholic rituals. But that's pretty much it. You haven't mentioned anything about any other religions. You're just kinda using the Pope as a portal through which to shit on this particular religion, and I feel like if he were a religious leader of a different faith, you would probably do the same thing, which leads me to believe that maybe the issue is not the religion itself, maybe it's you and your logical approach and your rhetoric and the fact that you suck. I don't know. That's just me. That's just me.
It was deeply disappointing that Pope Francis declined the $1 million vegan campaign's offer to go vegan for Lent in exchange for a $1 million donation to a charity of his choice.
They could have donated that money anyway. I really don't understand why it is that they couldn't have donated it and then said, we are doing this in the spirit that we could change the Pope's mind. They could have given a charity that money anyway. It was never about the money. It's about holding money over people's heads in order to manipulate somebody into doing something. It's kind of the same way that Elon Musk said that he could solve childhood hunger or like hunger across the world with all of the money that he has, and then he just didn't do it. What the fuck is that?
Because animal agriculture is an inefficient system that consumes vast resources, contributing to global hunger. For instance, feeding crops to animals instead of directly to humans is wasteful and exacerbates food scarcity.
What she is presenting this as is that you are not allowed to eat vegetables or fruit or nuts or seeds or anything, and I don't think that's true at all. When I was helping one of my friends move recently, we decided that we would go to a local farm that's about a 10 to 15 minute drive away from her. And when we went there, there was this abundance of fresh produce, vegetables, fruit, nuts, seeds, etc. Not just from that farm, but from local growers in the community. And everybody was coming together to buy strawberries, pears, apples. My friend bought bok choy and rainbow carrots and rainbow chard. The way that she's making it seem is a very dire situation where it's like no person on earth has access to food because we're giving it all to the stupid cow. First of all, you're misrepresenting the reality of the situation for your audience, and like again, very intellectually dishonest, but also you're not really addressing the systemic and institutional issues that contribute to poverty and hunger in different cultural contexts. And again, she wants to talk about supporting marginalized communities, and it's just not there. It's really just not there. In other videos that I've seen that August has covered, she mostly uses marginalized people as a means to further her own message, like a tool almost. Like it almost doesn't matter the cultural context that they lived in or their lived experience or the issues that face their populations every day. It's more along the lines of like, well, how can I use the concept of you to further my message and my renown and this, that, and the third. Again, just very shitty, very intellectually dishonest, nothing I haven't said before. All right, I'm in the home stretch. I'm almost done.
By promoting a plant-based diet, the Pope could have highlighted a more sustainable and equitable approach to feeding the world's population. So not only did the Pope not give a shit about suffering animals, he also didn't give a shit about suffering children.
Again, I am saying for the third time, the atrocities that Israel is committing against Palestinians, against the country, the nation of Palestine. Hundreds upon thousands of children have been killed, have been orphaned, have been injured, have had their lives irreparably changed. And he chose to speak about that in the last days of his life, to call not only for a ceasefire, but to call for the world to turn its attention towards them and remind us that yes, children in our own backyard mean something to us and we care about them and we need to do for them, but the children who are suffering the most need our attention too. The children who are being orphaned by the minute. There are children whose parents die giving birth to them that they never get to meet, and he chose to say, we need to look at this head on, call it what it is, which is genocide. And for her to say that he doesn't give a shit about children when he used his final days, the final hours that he had on this earth to talk about children who are being harmed by the second, the minute, the hour, the day, for her to say that is not only ethically bankrupt, but amoral. Not even immoral. Amoral, and it is just putrid. It is disgusting.
As the leader of over 1 billion Catholics worldwide, Pope Francis held significant influence. His participation in the campaign could have inspired millions to consider the ethical, environmental, and health benefits of a vegan lifestyle.
You know what he did do as in his tenure as Pope? He prompted so many people to reconsider the place of women and LGBTQ people within the institution of the church. He prompted people, millions of people around the world, to consider the way that the church has acted wrongly and in harm in the context of colonialism and imperialism. He prompted millions of people to have conversations not just across policy tables or across news desks, but in their own homes, in their own churches, in their own Bible studies and religious circles, about where the church was in the context of the world, in the context of American society, in the context of just day-to-day life. And the fact that she is saying all of that didn't matter, or that it had no effect on the world, or that he did a net harm to the world by doing that instead of talking about veganism, is perhaps, again, just morally, the most morally bankrupt thing she could have possibly said. And again, I have seen many videos where she says incredibly horrible things about numerous people, whether or not they deserve it. And somehow she continues to shock me. She continues to raise the bar, or perhaps lower the bar, further into the ground, and then tunnel under it, which is just, I can't even say I gotta give it to him. I can't really say anything other than this is really what you want your legacy to be as a content creator, as a person on this earth who just makes disgusting, putrid, morally bankrupt statements to frighten and scare people into doing something that you want them to do. That is, in layman's terms, it couldn't be me.
But you do. So be better than the Pope. Like, subscribe, and press the notification bell to assure your place in heaven and not in hell.
Oh my god. That is an Alex Jones level pivot. And that's not a compliment. That is a horrendous insult. I don't know if y'all have ever heard me talk about the Knowledge Fight podcast. They cover Alex Jones and everybody within that misinformation sphere. And the reason why I bring it up is because he will say horrific, frightening, terrible shit. He will be screaming it at the top of his lungs. He will be snarling, growling, and you know, if you've ever found a clip of him outside of the Frogs clip. I have listened to countless clips of him through that podcast, saying the most terrible things to his audience to frighten them into giving him their attention, only for him to then say, that's why I need you to buy CMOS. That's why I need you to buy Brain Force. That is essentially what Miss Kadie is doing. Again, she is utilizing that rhetorical tactic, which is, I'm going to shock you, shock you, shock you.
Nightmare, 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 nightmare.
And then I'm going to give you a call to action that will assure you that you are acting correctly and that you will feel better about what it is that I just scared you with. I've said this a million times in the past 30 seconds, but I mean, that's morally bankrupt. That is amoral. In her terms, it is inhumane the way that she's treating her audience and the way that she is treating people who view her content. All in the name of veganism. Again, it couldn't be me. Couldn't be me. All right, I've had about enough of that. So that was the first vegan teacher video that I got to react to, which was awesome. Very, very cool. Yeah. I literally have nothing else to say. I feel like I've just said it already. Because, what the fuck is wrong with her? What's going on with her that she feels justified to say these things? I have no idea what's wrong with her. Maybe we'll look at it more in the future. And if not, then the evil will have been defeated. But anyway, thank you for sticking with me through all of that. I really do appreciate it. If you feel so inclined, leave a like, a comment, a subscribe. If you do, that would be great. But yeah, that's all I have for you today. Stay tuned for tomorrow, when it'll be tomorrow. Bye.